Hello, hello. This is Arielle Silver coming to you for another week of Tomes and Tunes, where I talk with songwriters from all over the world about books because we love books, and we do a little song swap too. So, this is episode 19. I am honored to have as my guest this week Marty Axelrod from Los Angeles, and I'm going to invite him in right now. Let's see here. Do. Hi, Marty.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Ariel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I look a little washed out to me, but I feel fine. I feel better than I look right
Who
now.
is that sitting on your shoulder? That way, sitting on your shoulder.
You're backwards, but that that's Laura Nero behind me,
Oh,
and out of frame, I think, is John Lennon.
okay. Yeah, that's definitely not John Lennon that I'm looking at. Oh, yeah, I see like his shoulder a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Or the other way. I don't know.
yeah,
So, Marty, you and I were just talking about how we're surprised that we haven't crossed paths before.
yeah,
I've actually seen you play um, at a venue that used to be sort of one of the cornerstone music venues here in Los Angeles called Room 5.
yeah.
And
That's
it
a
was
great
on the
room.
second floor above a restaurant, and it was a great little songwriter place. Before I moved to Los Angeles, I actually had played Room 5 when I was on tour. And when I moved to Los Angeles, I was like, I got to spend time there. And I saw you play with a woman named Nicole Gordon, and you
Hmm.
had a project called Songs of Shiloh.
Yeah,
What was that about?
yeah. Nicole and I uh, met in a kind of a songwriting workshop situation, and uh, the uh, the guy Marty Martin who was leading it, who's
Yes.
no longer with us, but was a terrific guy, a friend of songwriters, and he said, "Why don't two of you? Why don't you guys pair up and write songs together?" And I didn't know Nicole, and she was sitting next to me, and I said, "Where do you live?" And she said, "Los Feliz," and I said, "Done. We're going to write together." And
Is that where you are?
I'm in Mount Washington, which is
Okay.
that general northeast LA, as we
Yeah.
like to call it. And uh, so we met up and we wrote a song, uh, and then we fell in love with the character in the song,
Yeah.
and we decided to write a whole album of songs from that character's point of view. And
Yeah.
she's just kind of like a normal, young woman from Northern California who has, you know, tribulations and joys in her life, and so we just basically wrote a sort of a story in 10 songs about this woman, Shiloh, and called it Songs of Shiloh, and uh, and it's the only record I ever actually produced myself, and Nicole's a phenomenal singer,
Yeah, she
and
is.
and I'm still in love with that project. We actually did a Songs of Shiloh show right before the pandemic lockdown on February 15th
Oh.
at a house concert, and it was packed. I mean, there was way too many people in there, and now looking back at knowing that COVID was already kind of among us, I just am so grateful that no one got sick from our show.
Oh, I know just what you mean. I was at the Folk Alliance conference in New Orleans in January, and I was sick. I lost my voice, and I had a couple of roommates during that conference. And afterwards, one of them messaged me, and she said, "You didn't have COVID, did you? Or are you know?" And it was just starting to kind of like. I mean, I was sick before it was
before it
identified
was
as
before it
hitting
was
our
cool.
yeah, before it was cool, right? It was, supposedly it was before it came to this country. Who knows? It was just a cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. You start to kind of recount, like, where were you? How many people were there? What was the situation?
Yeah, I think a lot of
Yeah.
people were, that felt very sick around that time, might have had it and not known it. I think
Yeah,
it's
we might not have
possible.
had COVID-19. Maybe we had, one of the COVID viruses or something
Yeah,
like that.
who
Who
knows? I'm not a
knows?
doctor. I just want to
I
say that
know.
right now.
Just a songwriter.
Nor a scientist. Yeah,
Um, let's. Well, you're also in another group, the Tall Men group.
Tall Man Group is yeah. It's another yeah. It's a sort of a collective of 5 songwriters, and we get together once a month, and one of the guys is a very good cook, so he makes dinner,
That never
and
hurts.
everybody has to bring in a new song. So it started out as just a kind of a device to keep everybody writing, but then we decided to turn it into a band, and we've been going since 2012 now, and playing a lot, and now during COVID we don't get together for dinner, but we still get together to bring in new songs on Zoom, and it's been great. I mean, so many good songs have come out of it, and one song a month is not exactly an onerous burden, but
Yeah.
but it's good to know that you're going to write one song a month no matter what.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been good, and it's and it's also kind of like a men's group. Kind of has that function of everybody's kind of entwined in each other's lives, and in a nice way.
And hey, free dinner.
Yes, exactly. I thought that was the thing that was keeping it going, but apparently it's continued on even without the food. So
So even the personalities,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
even the company, not just the food.
So it's been a good thing, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a value-added show. Like we each have sort of some followers, but then when we all come together, that is kind of multiplied, and it's been nice. We've made 5 CDs, and yeah, and they're all guitar players except for me, and I don't play guitar at all. I have no aptitude for it,
Yeah.
and so it's nice to be the keyboard player and have that kind of territory staked out for myself, and they can all fight over their guitar
Yeah.
voicings beyond that.
I just realized Marty Martin, is that how you know Kevin Fisher originally?
No, I knew Kevin before then,
Okay.
but I was really happy when he got involved in that. Kevin's sort of, I guess, our main connector between you and me. I mean,
I think so.
I mean indirectly, but
Yeah.
no, I met Kevin back in the days of the Billy Block's Western Beat at Highland Grounds, which was sort of the seminal place for me I think all the cool people I've met,
Yeah.
or I met at Western Beat. I don't know if you frequented that scene or if you were even here then.
I wasn't, and it's like the stuff of legends.
But yeah, it was fantastic, and and Naked to the World was a regular, on that bill, and
So the bass player of Naked to the World, Darby Orr?
we actually haven't met, but I
Oh,
understand.
okay.
I understand he's terrific.
He is terrific, and I'm also married to him.
Yeah, I know that. Kevin would talk about him all the time, so I felt like feel like I should have known him by now.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah.
Very cool. And so this is, maybe the most boring of topics, but I was curious to just talk with you about the weather for a second.
Oh yeah.
It's
Well,
raining ash over here in the Burbank, North Hollywood area where I am. How is it by you?
yeah, it's important to note for context the sky over much of California is orange today.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's yeah, we're getting the ash,
Yeah.
of course, but it just I just read it before I came on that downtown LA has the worst air quality in 30 years today, and it's bad. I've taken up tennis during COVID as a kind of a safe form of
Yeah.
exercise, and my tennis partner keeps trying to get me out there, and I'm like, I'm not going out and breathing.
Yeah, I went out for a walk this morning. I go for a walk nearly every day, and I haven't much over the last few days between heat wave and fires. And today I went out. I thought it was okay when I first stuck my head out the door, and I kind of checked it. I was like, yeah, it's not terrible. But about a mile or two in, I was like, wow, I wish I was just inside at home right now.
Yeah, no,
it's
it's
not
not, I mean,
good.
these fine particulates really can get in your lungs, and it's not, and it's really not something to play around with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean,
is.
if I had to quit smoking, and many years ago, and so I'm not going to blow it now. I could have been enjoying cigarettes all these years if does that make sense? No, yeah, let's stay inside. It's bad out there.
Yeah, it's
It's
really
really
bad.
bad.
All the
And
windows and doors are shut right now, and this is an interesting year. I mean, we always have wildfires here. Who knew? That wasn't a thing that I was ever aware of when I lived back east, really. But since moving here, I remember the first fire season that I was here. I was working in the MGM Tower in Century City, and I forget what floor I was on, maybe the 20th floor or something like that. And I was looking out the windows, and I just see some fire on the hills in the distance. And I was like, what is going on here? Where do I live? I had never experienced that before. And everybody else was just going about their business like, oh yeah, this is normal,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And
it is definitely getting worse. I
yeah.
I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio,
Ah.
and the only thing burning there is the river, as we know. So.
We humans are amazing. I just want to say hi to Charmin and Ann. I see they're commenting in the chat. Hi, you guys. New Jersey had an earthquake. Wow, Charmin.
Yeah, I heard about the 3 point something. Yeah.
Amazing. And anybody else who's here, if you are listening live, give a hello in the chat so we can see you. Hi, Mark. Nice to see you over in Dallas. Hope you're safe there. And Marty, you are, so you and I got connected. This is the 19th episode, 19 weeks of me just connecting with songwriters. I wanted to connect in the time of COVID. I realized that for me, I'm that kind of introvert who really likes the one-on-one connection with people. And I realized that I wasn't having, I wasn't meeting new people or connecting about I wasn't able like any of us able to go to live music shows or literary readings, and I really love those live gatherings of really of a lot of introverts basically like gathering over music and their shared love of words. And this kind of came out naturally. Actually, Anne, who is watching right now, Anne Stott, she's a songwriter in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And she was my very first guest on the show when it first started, episode 1. Anne, is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong. But we had someone who was watching the show that week who I was broadcasting from a different room, and a bookshelf was behind me, and a bookshelf was behind Anne. And one of the watchers of the show took note of that, and she actually gave this name, Tomes and Tunes. And that was Harriet Reynolds, who's out of Austin. And so since then, it's really become a purposeful conversation about books with other songwriters. And you happen to be a book lover. That was how you and I kind of, like, somehow we ended up chatting, like, oh, I love books.
Yeah, I'm
Let's get you on the
not
show.
only that, I'm a professional reader.
You're a professional. Oh, that's right. You're a script reader. Is that right?
Yeah, but we read a lot of books, as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been doing it forever, and it's just kind of like been sort of the, kind of an ideal day job for me, because I can do it at home and kind of make my hours, and sometimes I get to read, sometimes I get paid to read something that I was dying to read anyway, and then that's the best,
Yeah.
and like the book that I want to talk about today. That's one that falls into that category. I got to read it for work last week, and
Oh my gosh, what an ideal job.
it kind of it if it paid like 10 times as much, it would be the ideal job. But it's pretty, it's a union job, and how many union jobs are left in America, really?
Right.
And it's funny, we had a meeting of. Our title is Story Analyst, right? And we had a meeting of union story analysts last night on Zoom, and most people have actually had their position for like 20 years or more. And it's because if it works for you, it works for you, and basically it it supports my music career beautifully. So it's been, and I was an English major in college. I actually went to 4 schools in 4 years, which is one of my proud facts of my life. I don't know how I pulled it off, but I just every year I transferred, and
Wow. And you
and
finished in
I
4 years
still
still?
graduated on time.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I started at Northwestern, and then um, ended up. I graduated from Ohio State, and I still don't know how that all happened. Um, and then I moved to New York for about 5 years, and then I came out to, and I was there. I was working as a musician and just freelance keyboard player and drummer. And I would, like bring my drums down to the curb and then wait for a checker cab to show up so I could fit my drums in it and go to the gig and come back. It was adventurous, and I loved New York. And then I came out to just kind of check out LA, not having any intention of moving here. And then I met my wife, Kim, and I mean, she wasn't my wife then. I just met her, and then and then I never went back, and I realized that I didn't live in New York anymore,
Huh.
and now I'm fully in love with LA.
I love LA. I do too. I just have this. I'm just thinking about all the drummers who live in New York right now and how difficult that is to cart your gear. And it's no joke as a keyboard player either.
Yeah.
Because those are heavy instruments, and you have the stand and everything.
Yeah.
Um,
In my next life, I'm going to reconsider all that. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
flutes. Flutes really.
work harder on guitar, I think.
Or ukulele. So, script reader and story analyst. I just hope that there is like a little version, a younger version of me who is watching this show, so that she knows that that is a job that you can get, that you can do. In
Yeah,
this
I didn't
world.
know.
That's
I didn't
amazing.
know. I was, still working as a musician when I came out here, and I would have, really good months and not good months, and it was just kind of up and down. So I started doing this just to kind of fill in the gaps
Yeah.
on a freelance basis, and yeah, it just continued to serve that purpose for me.
So, what is it like reading a script versus reading a book for you?
Well, in you have to use a lot of imagination about what the movie would actually look like, but
Yeah.
you're really just kind of reacting to whatever it makes you feel. It's the same as it's the same process. It's ultimately about your emotional reaction to the material,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
you
a good
try to be,
imagination to fill
and
in
then
all
you,
the
then you have to
gaps.
remember that it's not at all about you, and you're supposed to be every audience for every movie, and I like the challenge of that, of getting outside your own head, even though it's impossible to get outside of your own head.
Yeah.
But to the extent that you can try, um, you can try to have an objective idea of how the general public might feel about something,
Yeah.
piece of material, and that's a crazy subjective. I mean, the job has no. It makes no sense, but they keep letting me do it. So, and I get to spout my opinion, uh, over and over again.
Have you had the pleasure of seeing one or many of the books slash scripts that you've read actually on the big screen? Have
Not
you?
many. I mean, well, certainly, almost all the time, if that happens, it's through a different studio, because the material goes out to all the studios at once, and the chances that of the studio that I work at actually buying it and making it are, kind of very small. But I've seen a lot of things that I've read, become movies for sure, and it's always different. It always comes out different than you would expect, and that's
Yeah.
kind of great. That's the great thing about movie making. And I don't, I don't have a lot of experience in movie production, but or almost none. So it's just funny to be at the beginning of that process. When the script
Yeah.
is just pure potential,
Yeah.
and hasn't been compromised in any way from
Is-
what the writers wanted to say.
Have you ever read something where you just felt so passionately about that, like this has to be made, and like you're so like you're just dying to see it come alive in
Sure.
that way?
Yeah. Yeah. And I usually get shut down on that, but uh, yeah, there. You see exciting things all the time.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but maybe 2% of the time, which is pretty good.
Huh.
You know. But yeah, uh, it's not super gratifying in the sense that I'm always getting to say, oh, I'm the reason that movie's on screen. Hardly,
Yeah.
I just express an opinion, and the people that I work for make all the decisions. So,
This is perfect. It's like you read a book, you express an opinion. What a job.
yeah.
So what have you, this might be different than what you plan to share today, but what are you reading currently?
Well, reading for work right now. I just read a 550-page nonfiction book that was kind of grueling. Just finished that today. Uh,
That was
you
for
get,
work as well?
yeah, I got 3 days for that, and it's so
Okay.
there are deadlines. That's the downside of the job. That's why you get the big bucks. But the book that I want to talk about, if it's time for that,
Sure.
if that's
Yeah, go
okay.
for it.
Actually, I just read yesterday. This book won the Women's Prize for Fiction, which is a prize. Oddly, the book has to be published in Britain, but can be written by a person of any nationality. But the author happens to be Irish. Her name is Maggie O'Farrell, and the book is called Hamnet, which is the name of Shakespeare's son who died at age 11 from the plague. And the great thing about the book is that it's not about Shakespeare. It's about his wife and kids who he left behind in Stratford while he went off to London to pursue a career. And so his wife, whose actual name was Anne Hathaway, but in the book her name is Agnes, is the protagonist of the novel, um, and it's about the loss of a child, and it's about so many things. It's just a beautiful, beautiful novel, and comes to this very kind of satisfying conclusion and one of the lovely devices of the novel is that she never mentions Shakespeare by name. She never uses his name. He's referred to as the husband or the father or the Latin tutor or whatever function he's fulfilling at that in that scene. But by not using his name, it takes all sort of the weight off of his presence in the book and allows it to be about her.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the writing.
Will you share a little bit of it with us today?
Yeah, this is a bit long, although I've edited a little bit to make it less long. But it's sort of, excuse me.
No,
It's sort of
my chair. I need some WD-40 for this chair. I
Yeah.
always forget until I'm live streaming. I'm like, oh.
This is sort of a flashback to when Shakespeare and Agnes first meet, and it's just kind of a really nice scene. And when you see, their marriage kind of goes south as it goes along, but this is that spark of first meeting, and he's tutoring her brothers in Latin. And he looks out the window and he sees this young woman holding a falcon on her arm. And he's just like, I've got to meet her. So he runs over, and this is what happens. He says, "May I see your bird?" She frowns. "My bird? I saw you earlier, emerging from the forest, did I not, with a bird on your arm? A hawk, a most intriguing... For the first time her face betrays an emotion, concern, worry, an element of fear. You won't tell them, she gestures toward the farm, will you? I was forbidden to take her out today, you see, but she was so restless, so hungry, I couldn't bear to shut her up all afternoon. You won't say, will you, that you saw me, that I was out? The tutor smiles. He steps toward her. I shall never speak of it, he is able to say grandly, consolingly. He puts his hand on her arm. Do not concern yourself. She flicks her gaze up to meet his. They regard each other at close quarters. He sees eyes almost golden color with a deep amber ring around their centers, flecks of green, long dark lashes, pale skin with freckles over the nose and along the cheekbones. She does a strange thing. She puts her hand to his, where it is resting on her forearm. She takes hold of the skin and muscle between his thumb and forefinger and presses. The grip is firm, insistent, oddly intimate, on the edge of painful. It makes him draw in his breath. It makes his head swim, the certainty of it. He doesn't think anyone has ever touched him there in that way before. He could not take his hand away without a sharp tug, even if he wanted to. Her strength is surprising, and he finds peculiarly arousing. All at once she drops hand. She moves her arm away from him. His hand, where she grips him, feels hot and very naked. He rubs at his forehead with it, as if to make it right again. You wanted to see my bird, she said, all business and confidence now, taking a key from a chain hidden in her skirts, unlocking the door and pushing it open. Then she takes him in to see her bird. Oh, by the way, she sort of has a bit of a psychic power. That's why she's pressing on between his thumb and forefinger, so she can kind of read him. And so she takes him in. He sees the bird, and she keeps it in this room where all the apples are stored for the winter. I'm skipping ahead. And he keeps asking her name insistently, and she doesn't. Finally, she says, "Anne," she says, or seems to say, at the same time as he is saying, "I must know." "Anne," he repeats, thrown, the word at once familiar yet queer in his mouth. It was the name of his sister, who died not quite 2 years ago. He has not, he realizes, spoken the name since the day she was buried. He sees again, and for a moment, the wet churchyard, the dripping yew trees, the dark maw of the ground, ripped open to accept the white-wrapped bodies, so slight and small. Too small, it seemed, to go into the earth like that alone. The falconer girl takes advantage of his momentary confusion to push him away from her. He topples into the shelves that run around the walls. There's a strange echoey sound, like 1,000 game counters or balls finding their place. He gropes around himself and finds several round objects, tight-skinned, cool, a spike at their center. Suddenly he realizes what the familiar smell in here is. "Apples," he says. She gives a short laugh across the space from him, her hands resting on the shelf behind her, the falcon beside her. "It's the apple store." He brings one up to his face and inhales the scent, sharp, specific, acidic. It brings a slew of distant images to mind: fallen leaves, sodden grass, wood smoke, his mother's kitchen. "Anne," he says, biting into the apple's flesh. She smiles, her lips curving in a way that maddens and delights him all at the same time. "That is not my name," she says. He lowers the apple in mock outrage and partial relief. "You told me it was." "I didn't." "You did." "You weren't listening then." He flings aside the half-eaten apple and comes towards her. "Tell me now." "I won't." "You will." "You'll tell me when we kiss." She puts her head to one side. "Presumptuous," she says. "What if we never kiss?" "But we shall." Again, her hand finds his. Her fingers grip the flesh between his thumb and forefinger. He raises his brow and looks into her face. She has the expression of a woman reading a particularly hard piece of text, a woman trying to decipher something, to work something out. She says, "What are you doing?" He asks, "Why do you hold my hand like that?" She frowns. She looks at him directly, searchingly. "What is it?" he says, suddenly disquieted by her silence, her concentration, her grip on his hand. The apples rest in their grooves around them. The bird sits immobile on its perch, listening in. The woman leads toward him. She releases his hand, which again feels raw, peeled, ravaged. Without warning, she presses her mouth to his. He feels the twin plushness of her lips, the hard press of her teeth, the impossible smoothness of the skin of her face. Then she pulls back. "It's Agnes," she says.
Hmm. I love that description when he's smelling the apples and recognizing the smell of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful scene, and then made more, poignant by our knowledge that that marriage is, just going to go bad, and and just how sweet that their meeting was, and how he really kind of abandoned the family basically, and to for he the in this story his father is a glove maker, and he's sent to London. He sends his son to London to find some more like markets for his gloves, and he writes back to Agnes that he's sold a bunch of gloves to a theater company, and so that's how you kind of know that he's found his people in London.
Huh.
And it's beautifully kind of understated.
And was this a book that you were reading for pleasure or for work?
This one,
Mm-hmm.
this was for work, and
Okay.
it was certainly a pleasure. And
Yeah.
I had seen it reviewed, and I was really interested to read it. And these things are assigned to us. I think there's maybe 10 readers at our studio, and so everything's assigned kind of randomly, and
Yeah.
so it's just kind of sheer luck when something comes your way that you would have wanted to read anyway.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention this writer, Maggie O'Farrell, has a book, a memoir, that I really want to read next. It's called I Am, which is a Sylvia Plath quote, I had to be told. But the subtitle is 17 Brushes with Death. And it is her 17 experiences of near death.
Huh.
Or I mean, in her actual life, it's a memoir.
Yeah.
And that just sounds really fascinating to me too.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm a fan of memoir and novels, but that intrigues me. Also, it sparks my curiosity regarding the structure and how she chose to structure that.
Yeah,
Just the
me too.
title, because it says 17, or the description, I guess.
Right.
Subtitle. Yeah, I'm intrigued actually.
Yeah, me too.
Um,
Do you?
I
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just asking. Wondering if you're a liker of Kindle format.
I do not have a Kindle. I read either hardcover books or audio when I'm
Interesting.
when I'm walking.
Interesting.
I used to be a
yeah.
runner, but during the pandemic, something happened with my leg. I don't know what, and so now I've been walking. You know. But yeah. Do you use Kindle?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Almost everything comes in as either a PDF to be read on iPad or Kindle, and I like it. I don't
Yeah.
like being read to. That's interesting. The audio thing doesn't really appeal to me.
That's interesting. I think that there are probably upsides to all of the different ways, right?
Yeah.
The audiobook thing just started for me a couple of years ago. I want to say it was in 2018. It was that summer, I believe. I was trying to read a lot, like more than usual, and I felt like I didn't have enough time. And I was also running, about an hour a day. And I had been using that time. Initially, I didn't listen to anything when I started out as a runner for many years. I just listened to my thoughts, and then at some point I started listening to podcasts during that time. And then I think it was that particular year that I just felt like I wanted to cram. That makes it sound terrible, but I really wanted to just like get inside my mind a lot of literature. And I realized that I could either give up my hour run every day, or I could start listening to audiobooks during that time, so that I could, during the time that I normally read a book, I could read those books. So it just kind of started that way. Yeah, some narrators are great and some are not great. You know,
Mhm.
it's just the way it goes. Lately, on audiobook, I have been reading. I still don't know exactly how to articulate, one way or the
Consuming.
other. But yeah, consuming. That's a good one. I have been consuming Britt Bennett's The Vanishing Half on audio, which is, I'm so enjoying it. And then in book form, consuming that way, I just started reading The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Been reading her a little bit um, during this time. I want to just call it summer, but it's really like 7 months now of the quarantine. And over the weekend, I finished a memoir called "Son of a Gun," which is by Justin St. Germain, and it's an inquiry into himself and also into the murder of his mother by his stepfather, and also in part sort of an inquiry into our culture's relationship with guns. And so I was going to share one of those books, a passage from either The Bluest Eye or Son of a Gun today here, but I was journaling this morning, and when I wrote the date at the top of my page, I was like, oh, it's September 10th. And as the day was unfolding, I remembered that this book by Pete Hamill, Forever. Are you familiar with this one?
No.
I'm not sure if this has been made into a movie or if it was optioned. I feel like it would be, but I'm not sure if it has been. But the story behind this book is that he finished it and delivered it to his editor, I believe, on September 10th, 2001. And he lived, this is about the entire book. Is the reverb too much, by the way? I feel like it's a little echoey. Is it too much here? How's the sound?
Better.
Better? Let's see here. This whole book takes place, almost the whole book takes place on the island of Manhattan. And it's an epic novel, historical fiction, where the protagonist is an Irish boy who, if I remember correctly, I don't remember what year it starts, but in like, I want to say like medieval times, or something, sometime a long time ago. And something happens, his father, I believe, if I remember correctly, is killed, and he decides to avenge his murder. And something about that leads him to, oh, it wouldn't have been medieval times, it would have been more recently, but he ends up on a slave ship, and something about avenging his father's death and meeting one of the Africans who has been stolen from Africa and is being taken to the New World on this ship. Somehow they become friends, and something magical transpires between them, and a curse/blessing is put on the protagonist, where once he arrives in Manhattan, he can live forever, he will live forever, but he can't leave the bounds of the island itself. And so this book takes place over a large swath of basically, from the settlement of this land into the colonies, into the country. And it was supposed to end, the book was finished on September 10th. And then the writer took it back from his editor and rewrote the ending to include September 11th. And so I thought it would be appropriate that I read a little bit from here. Let me just see here. There we go. Okay, that might be a little better. When the cloud settles, the world has turned white. This is after, I can't remember if it's the first or second tower, but The color of, when the cloud settles, the world has turned white, the color of death to the Africans who once lived here. A fine white dust covers the graveyard of St. Paul's and the steeple of the chapel. It covers the street and the sidewalks of Vesey Street. It covers the police cars. It covers the small wheel of the first doomed airliner and the blood of the woman who must have been killed by it. Up toward Broadway, he can see the building on Park Row where J&R Music has its stores. It's white. So are the buildings on Ann Street. The cloud has coated them all. Broadway is white. The City Hall Park is white, and City Hall itself is white. And then he sees people moving lumpily through the white landscape, and they're white too. Black men and black women are white. Mexicans and Dominicans and Chinese, all white. They move like stragglers from a defeated army, like refugees, coated with white powder, all heading north, alive. Broadway is covered with the powder, which is fine and slippery like the powder used on babies. He sees hundreds of women's shoes kicked off so that women could run faster on bare feet. 2 school buses coated with dust are at the curb near Park Place, with nurses offering water and help. He glimpses himself in a mirror, completely white. His tongue is dusty, his nostrils clogged. He tries the cell phone again. No sound at all. He's looking for someone, so I'm kind of skipping over the parts where he's looking for his girlfriend. And then he hears the roar of the North Tower coming down. Above the building where Macy's once served laughter and breakfast, he glimpses the upper floors and the television antenna vanishing, feels the ground shudder from the impact of 1,000,000 tons of pancaking floors, all of it coming down beyond the view from Chambers Street, carrying with it windows on the world and uncountable stockbrokers and the offices of Reynoso and Ryan, all vanished. And then, after a few seconds, he sees the second cloud. This one is wilder, denser, angrier than the first cloud. It rises over the buildings, extending 1,000 arms, rumbling up Murray Street and Warren Street toward City Hall, recombining on Broadway, engulfing every puny human before it, rising high when it hits an obstacle, a parked police car, a hot dog vendor's cart, a park bench, then, filled with the screams of dead souls, rolls on its furious path until it settles on the southern border of the 5 Points, at the vanished ridge of the Collect, at the hanging ground, on the graves of the Irish and the Africans. In the shocked stillness, a flock of birds, confused and stunned, races across the sky from Park Row toward the Hudson, then turns back toward Brooklyn, away from the whiteness, away from doom. And now people are running again, dozens of them, then hundreds. They abandon the payphones. They burst out of the shops where they found shelter. They run in a chaotic wave up Broadway, past the federal buildings, past the police cars and the ambulances, racing toward Canal Street and the city beyond. There's no emotion on their whitened faces. Cormac sees no blood, but they run. Everything else can wait. And I'll leave it there. I remember when I read this, I didn't know anything about this book when I picked it up. I think that I was working at a talent agency, and the literary department had a bunch of books, and they were just trying to get rid of them. And so I grabbed, as I do, a bunch of books, and this was one of them. And I hadn't known what it was about when I picked it up, and I hadn't known that it would, cover this huge swath of history, or that it would end up there. But I remember when I read this part, it really just hit me, his descriptions of the actual day of 9/11 and then, the aftermath of it.
Yeah, it brings back that morning, and I was in LA obviously, but driving my kids to school as that news was coming in, and just that morning is so vivid in everyone's memory,
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's memory. Yeah. I was on the East Coast. I was living in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is basically, Plymouth Rock. It's well known. I was living in the backwoods of Plymouth and disconnected from everything. And I went back to the cabin that was my home, and I had messages on my cell phone, from my family. Are you okay? Where are you? What are you doing? And then that whole thing that I know so many others did, which was find the nearest television set and then sit and watch the towers fall and fall and fall for days over and over again. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's kind of, still shocking now,
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Everybody has stories about stuff about that. And so today is September 10th, which is, I think it was last year. I actually clipped it somewhere. There was an article in the New Yorker, I think it was the New Yorker, that was, it was an essay on September 10th, 2001. And it was imagining a recreation of what was happening in Windows on the World, the restaurant at the top of the tower. It was a really interesting, wonderful essay.
We used to go up to the top roof of the World Trade Center when I lived in New York, just because the view was, so incredible, and it was just kind of fun to be up there.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad, we moved away before 9/11, but my dad used to work in the World Trade Center, and we used to have dinner at Windows on the World occasionally when we would meet him after work. Yeah. I think it might be a good time for a song.
Hey, yeah.
Would you play us some music?
My longest, saddest song, as a tree likes to say. No. Me? Sure. You hear that? Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Let's see. I thought of a bunch of different songs as we've been talking because just because the topics come up, but I'm going to go with this one, I think. There's two kinds of people in this world. Only two, and that is all. The ones that like anchovies and the rest of y'all. Some will say they're too fishy, or they don't like them little bones. Well, that's all good and fine. They don't need to justify having the palate of an 8-year-old. We are a house divided, well entrenched on either side. But wisdom resides in the half-baked eyes of the pizza delivery guy. So let's get half whatever. Half blessed anchovy. I love them little fishies. Now there are dozens of religions, half again as many creeds. Belief and atheism are just two sides of one coin to me. And I don't mean to beat a dead fish, but just the other night I had a dream about me and Jimmy Carter serving pizza to the whole Middle East, piece by piece. We are a house divided, we're getting good at picking sides. Salvation may lie among the radii of the humble pizza pie. So let's get half whatever. pineapple, kimchi, jalapeno, and half blessed anchovy. Coexisting pizza for thee, listening to Bon Jovi with my half anchovy, listening to Bon Jovi with my half anchovy. I'm just kidding, I don't listen to Bon Jovi.
That was definitely the New York side coming out.
So there's
Oh,
that.
that's fun. And was that writing prompts that someone else gave you, or did you?
Yes, but I don't remember what it was. It might have just been like write about food. I think that's what it was. Like,
And yeah, it's about food, but it's not about
last
food.
summer I was
Which is awesome.
my wife and I were on a cruise in Scotland, and there was a duo playing in the lounge. It was a very small boat, small cruise ship, and so they just had like a duo playing in the lounge, and they were from South Africa, and they were lovely people, and because had to work so hard all the time, you know, they were the entertainment for the whole boat, and so when they found out I was a songwriter, they were thrilled to have me up, because it's just, you know, gave them a break, and so I ended up playing like every night on the boat, like a couple sets, and that anchovy song became like everywhere I went on the boat, people would be like, "Anchovy guy," you know. It was like for some reason that song struck a chord with people trapped on a boat. I don't know why, but
You know, food is the great unifier. We all
Yeah.
need it.
there you go.
I have a friend who, she's a songwriter, and she wrote a song about cheeseburgers, and that's sort of like, that's the song. It's the
Yeah.
cheeseburger song. I'm gonna play, I'm just all about disaster songs and disasters today. 9/11 tomorrow, and ashes from the wildfires falling right now and everything. So this is a song that I wrote, inspired by the Midwest when I was touring through the Midwest, and met fantastic people. Had never before in my life been to Iowa and Kansas, and this was back in 2006, and you know, just driving my tour van with my drummer and bass player, and then after I moved to Los Angeles, and I don't remember what year it was that the Midwest was flooding. It happens frequently, but one particular year, I was looking at the map and looking at the flooding Mississippi, and just thinking about all the people whose houses I had slept in their spare rooms, on their living room floors, and all the people I had met on tour. And so this song came out of that.
Cool.
Can you hear that okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's called Highway 79, or East of Highway 79. Down around the bend, east of Highway 79, we got a water tower, church steeple, skyline. The farms go on for miles to the Mississippi banks. As far as you can see, everything's the same. An old man takes the bricks, the beams, the dreams from our lives left behind east of Highway 79. The flood of 93, well, it kicked us pretty bad. When the levee broke in Winfield, they nearly wiped us off the map. This June the rains came back, and there was talk that we should go. But when you're filling sandbags, you meet the nicest folks. An old man River's angry side. It takes the bricks, the beams, the dreams from our lives left behind east of Highway 79. We live down by down, day by day. Sandbags and prayers do not wash away. What will we lose just to stay? Side. It takes the bricks, the beams, the dreams from our lives left behind east of Highway 79. Left behind east of Highway 79. Those headphones sliding down my head.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I think I'm kind of a Midwest boy. You know, Cleveland. Well, I mean, it's sort of not the Midwest, but it's kind of ill-defined part of the country.
Yeah.
You know, it's the Great Lakes area, which is, you know, has its own. I guess that's the defining characteristic of that part of the country. But
Yeah,
it was
what-
the frontier, you know, back in colonial days, of course.
What Great Lake is Cleveland on?
Lake Erie, the
Okay.
smallest and southernmost of the Great Lakes.
That sounds
I
right
mean, there
out
are,
of a school book right there. Third grade history or social studies.
Right. And the river that winds through is called the Cuyahoga River, which is
That's right.
a Native American word for winding.
And that is the county that you're in as well.
Cuyahoga
There,
County.
right? Yes.
That's correct.
A friend of mine from college was from right there.
Yeah.
Too. I remember his license plate. He had something about it on there.
Yeah, I'm certainly. I have no family left there. My sister's in Cincinnati, so I guess that's my Ohio connection. But have no really, nobody left in Cleveland. So, but I took my son back to see it about 10 years ago, and because he wanted to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we went to the house that I grew up in, and this couple very nicely just let us come in and walk around the house for about a half hour. It was.
I had the same experience.
Did you?
Yeah.
At my house?
No. That would have been weird.
um, and they had changed nothing. The curtains were the same, and it was kind of spooky and good. But yeah, yeah. But you had the same. You knocked on the door and said,
So I moved away from. I lived in New Jersey when I was growing up for a little while, and moved away before I finished high school and moved back to Florida, where I'm from originally. And a long time went by, and I ended up going back to New Jersey for my 20th high school reunion. And I stayed at a friend's, a childhood friend's parents' house, and I slept in my friend's bed. She was not there, but like her little twin bed that she had grown up, sleeping on, and I had grown up going to her house and playing. We were like really childhood friends, spent a lot of time together as little girls, and then I went to the reunion. But while I was there, I was a runner, and I would go for runs every day and pass my old house. And every time I got to the top of the driveway, which it was a house built on a mountainside in the woods, and every time I got to the top of the driveway, I would just stand there and just tears, like just sob. And so the third day finally of doing that, someone like walked out of the house and was like, crazy lady, like, who are you? And the woman of the house, the owner, she invited me in to see it, and it was definitely a very powerful experience for me to be back in that home. And she had changed, stuff, but I don't even think we had curtains when I was growing up. I think we had blinds. I don't remember what she had for her window treatment, but yeah, it's powerful to go back to your childhood home.
yeah, that song, one of the greatest songs I think ever written, that Miranda Lambert's "The House That Built Me," is exactly about that. And
that song cracks. It just makes me cry.
I weep every time I hear that song.
Yeah, that's a good song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marty, this has been such a pleasure having you on the show and having the opportunity to talk and swap songs. And
Absolutely.
I can't believe that you like anchovies. I would never have guessed.
There's only two kinds of people in the world. There's no in between on that, which is
one's
true.
there and one's there.
Yeah.
Well,
but we can still be friends, right?
I think that we have the beginning of a friendship right here.
Absolutely.
And pizza, two halves. So.
I can't wait till we can all hang out in person.
Yeah. I wonder, I think about the show Tomes and Tunes, and I think about, like how awesome it is to gather with other songwriters and swap songs and just talk and break bread and, all that stuff. And,
yeah. And I'd love to meet Darby, and I know you would love my wife, Kim. She's pretty cool.
She got you to LA?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, she's a native Californian, and she grew up in the farmland of the Central Valley, and so I feel like a real honorary Californian being in.
That's funny, because I feel like an honorary Texan since Darby's from Texas, but I've never lived there at all. Well, let's do it. Let's have a dinner date and song swap when
Great.
This is all over.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Hold on just a second. I'm just going to say goodbye here. Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching, for listening. Please let me know what you're reading in the chat box if you are a book lover, which I think you are if you're hanging out here. And I hope that you will join me next week. Julia Kassia he's a Lebanese songwriter, and I believe also grew up in, I think, London, although I always think Paris. So maybe this is something that he and I are going to talk about on the call. But he now lives in New York City. And he's going to be on Tomes and Tunes for episode 20 next week. I hope to see you. And until then, please be safe. Stay indoors if you're in the wildfire areas here with the ash, and evacuate if you need to if you're in closer wildfire areas. Just be safe and sound, you guys. What times? Okay. See you next week.